Coming without conditions meant releasing control. It meant accepting that I couldn't shape every outcome or protect myself from every risk. I stopped rehearsing scenarios where things worked perfectly. I stopped needing certainty as proof. I understood that showing up fully requires vulnerability, and vulnerability can't exist behind safeguards and clauses. So I let go of the need to negotiate love into safety. I chose honesty over protection. I didn't come to claim or to own. I came to stand beside, not above. I don't come with promises written in the sky. I come with steps that never turned back. Life tried to slow me down. Time tried to change me. Silence tried to break me. But through every distance, every unanswered night, one truth stayed alive in me. I'm not coming to impress you. I am not coming to rescue you. I'm coming because my heart already chose you. And once I choose, I don't disappear. This is not a chase. This is not a moment. This is a decision. I am coming for you with patience, with fire, with a love that doesn't run when things get hard. I never said it out loud because saying it would have made it smaller than it was. Some promises are not meant to be spoken. They are meant to be carried. I carried this one across quiet days and restless nights, across places where your name stayed unspoken but never absent. Distance tried to turn feeling into memory, tried to convince me that silence meant ending, but silence became my discipline. The place where intention learned how to breathe without making noise. I learned that when you truly mean something, you don't chase with words, you move with direction. Every step away from you was still somehow a step toward you. Because the promise didn't depend on proximity, it depended on resolve. There were moments when the space between us felt heavier than it should, when absence tried to introduce doubt, when the world suggested that letting go would be easier than holding on. But easy has never been the measure of truth. I didn't need reassurance to continue. I needed clarity. And clarity came quietly. It came in the way. I never looked for replacements, never searched for distractions, never tried to fill the gap with noise. I let the distance remain what it was because I trusted what lived beneath it. That trust became my language, spoken in restraint, expressed in patience, proven in consistency. I didn't count the days because counting would have turned waiting into suffering. I let time pass without keeping score, knowing that real commitment doesn't watch the clock, it watches the direction. Even when nothing moved on the surface, something steady was happening underneath. A promise was strengthening itself, learning how to stand without applause, learning how to exist without confirmation. I didn't need to remind myself why I was doing this because the reason never left. It stayed present in small moments, in pauses, in the calm refusal to give up on something that felt honest. Distance teaches you things closeness never can. It strips away illusion. It shows you whether your feeling survives when comfort is removed. Mine did more than survive. It settled into something grounded. I wasn't pulled by longing alone. I was guided by intention. Longing fades when it isn't fed, but intention grows when it's tested. Every unanswered moment refined what I felt, removed anything fragile, anything impulsive, anything that couldn't last. What remained was solid, quiet, unshakable. I didn't ask for signs. I didn't demand certainty from the future. I accepted the not knowing and continued anyway. That's where the promise lived. Not in guarantees, but in choice. The choice to stay aligned with what felt true, even when no one was watching, even when nothing was rewarded, even when the road offered reasons to stop. I didn't stop. I adjusted my pace. I slowed down. I learned patience. But I didn't turn around. Turning around would have meant denying something real. And I don't deny reality just because it asked for endurance. I know you may not have felt every moment the way I did. I know distance creates different experiences on each side, but a silent promise doesn't depend on being seen to exist. It exists because it's lived. I lived it in the way I protected your place in my heart, without claiming ownership, in the way I respected the space without letting it erase meaning, in the way I trusted that what is meant to arrive doesn't need to be ragged closer. I let it come naturally because force has never built anything worth keeping. What I held on to wasn't fantasy. It wasn't a perfect image or an imagined future. It was something simpler and stronger. It was the understanding that some connections don't fade. When they're quiet, they deepen, they move inward. They become part of how you think, how you choose, how you move through the world. Even when I was surrounded by people, there was a calm awareness of you. No, loud, not consuming, just present, like a steady horizon that keeps you oriented no matter where you stand. I didn't make promises about outcomes. I made a promise about direction. I promised myself that I wouldn't let impatience rewrite something that was still being written. I promised that I wouldn't let temporary loneliness convince me that permanence wasn't possible. I promised that if the path asked me to wait, I would wait with integrity. That promise shaped how I behaved, how I spoke, how I held back when others rushed forward. It taught me that restraint can be an act of love, that silence can be loyalty, that distance can be honored without surrender. Every mile between us became a quiet witness. It saw me choose steadiness over reaction, depth over distraction, truth over convenience. It saw me continue without announcement, without demands, without fear. I didn't need to remind the world what I was moving toward. I only needed to keep moving. That's how the promise stayed alive, not by being repeated, but by being practiced day after day, moment after moment, breath after breath, remaining intact, remaining patient, remaining real, moving forward through distance with calm resolve and unwavering intention, and a heart that never stopped choosing the same direction, even when the way forward asked for more time, more faith, more silence, more strength than words could ever explain. And so I kept it unspoken and carried it with me quietly. Still, time didn't move. The way I expected it to. Some days felt endless. Others disappeared before I could understand them. But through all of it, patience became something more than waiting. It became strength. I learned that rushing doesn't bring you closer to what's real. It only reveals how unprepared you are to hold it. So I slowed down. I let time do what it does best, test what claims to be true. I didn't fight the waiting. I stepped into it and allowed it to shape me instead of weaken me. There were moments when impatience whispered that effort should bring immediate results, that love should arrive quickly if it's meant to stay. But patience taught me a different truth. Some things need time, not because they are fragile, but because they are valuable. What lasts is never rushed into existence. It is built quietly, layer by layer, through consistency that doesn't ask for recognition. I didn't measure progress by outcomes. I measured it by endurance, by the fact that even after time passed, the feeling didn't thin, didn't dull, didn't lose direction. Waiting doesn't mean standing still. It means moving forward without forcing the destination to appear before it's ready. I kept moving, learning, becoming someone capable of carrying what I feel without letting it turn into pressure or expectation. Patience became my discipline. It taught me how to hold space without filling it with doubt. It taught me how to trust without demanding proof. I realized that if something needs to be chased constantly, it's already running away. What belongs doesn't need to be hunted. It meets you when you are steady enough to receive it. Time tested me in subtle ways. It tested whether silence would make me restless, whether distance would make me careless, whether uncertainty would turn my commitment into frustration. Each test refined me. I stopped needing constant reassurance. I stopped looking for signs everywhere. I let time speak in its own language, slow but honest. And the longer it spoke, the clearer it became. That patience isn't passive, it's deliberate. It's choosing not to let temporary discomfort destroy something permanent. There were days when nothing changed on the surface. No messages, no movement, no confirmation. Those were the days patience mattered most. Those were the days that separated impulse from intention. I stayed, not because I was afraid to leave, but because leaving would have meant surrendering to doubt instead of trusting what felt grounded. I learned to sit with uncertainty without letting it poison what I felt. I learned to let questions exist without rushing to erase them. Time doesn't reward desperation, it responds to steadiness. And so I became steady. I let the waiting become part of the journey instead of an obstacle to it. I didn't ask time to hurry for me. I asked myself to grow within it. Every delay strengthened my understanding. Every pause deepened my resolve. I realized that patience doesn't make love weaker, it makes it resilient. It removes what's shallow and leaves only what can survive. I stopped fearing how long it was taking. Fear comes from needing control. Patience comes from trust. I trusted that what's meant to align doesn't miss its moment. I trusted that if something is real, time can stretch it but not break it. And so I allowed the process to continue without resistance. I allowed myself to exist in between. Without bitterness, without resentment, without losing direction. The longer I waited, the calmer I became. Not numb, not detached, but grounded. I no longer needed urgency to validate what I felt. I didn't need intensity to prove sincerity. Patience gave my emotions structure. It turned feeling into commitment, hope into endurance. I learned that loving with patience means respecting the rhythm of things you cannot control while remaining loyal to the choice you can. Time kept moving, and so did I, but never away from what mattered. I moved forward carrying patience like armor, not heavy, not rigid, but reliable. It protected what I felt from being rushed, misused, or weakened by doubt. It allowed love to breathe at its own pace, to grow roots instead of wings, to settle into something unshakable, something that didn't depend on speed or certainty, but on the quiet power of staying aligned through passing days and unanswered moments and long stretches of waiting, where nothing seemed to happen, but everything important was still forming underneath, slowly, steadily, without breaking, without fading, without needing to end. He learned early that words are easy to shape and harder to trust. Anyone can say they care. Anyone can promise forever when the moment feels warm. But love that survives doesn't live in sentences. It lives in behavior. It shows up when no one is watching. When there's nothing to gain, when silence would be more convenient than effort. I stopped explaining what I felt and started living in a way that respected it. I let my actions speak quietly, consistently, without asking to be noticed. I didn't prove love by grand gestures or dramatic declarations. I proved it by staying aligned with what I chose, even when it cost me comfort, by not entertaining distractions that offered escape but no depth, by showing restraint where others rushed loyalty, where others tested options. I understood that real love doesn't need to announce itself repeatedly. It needs to be reliable. It needs to feel the same on ordinary days as it does in emotional moments. So I became someone whose presence didn't fluctuate with mood or circumstance. There were chances to take easier paths, to choose convenience over commitment, to explain myself out of responsibility instead of integrity. I didn't take them, not because I was afraid, but because I knew what mattered to me. Actions reveal priorities faster than words ever will. I let my priorities stay clear, even when it meant being misunderstood. Even when it meant walking alone for a while, I trusted that truth doesn't need him. Mediate approval to remain true. Consistency became my way of loving, showing up the same way, whether things felt light or heavy. Remaining respectful even in absence, protecting what mattered without needing to control it. I didn't disappear when things slowed down. I didn't change direction when progress wasn't visible. I kept moving with intention, knowing that actions repeated over time carry more weight than any promise made once. I watched how easily people confuse attention with effort, how noise gets mistaken for depth. I chose differently. I chose to be steady instead of loud, present instead of impressive. I let my choices form a pattern that didn't contradict itself. Love should feel stable, not confusing. It should calm, not exhaust. So I acted in ways that reflected patience, respect, and clarity. Even when emotions could have pushed me toward reaction instead of resolve, I didn't need to prove anything to anyone else. I needed my actions to make sense to myself, to be able to look at how I moved through the world and know I wasn't betraying what I felt for temporary relief. I learned that love, proven by action, doesn't rush to be seen. It allows time to witness it. It allows distance to test it. And when it survives both, it no longer needs validation. Every choice I made either strengthened what I felt or weakened it. I chose the ones that strengthened it. I chose discipline over impulse, respect over pressure, patience over demand. Those choices didn't always feel easy, but they felt right. And right lasts longer than easy. I didn't act perfectly, but I acted honestly. I corrected myself when needed. I adjusted without abandoning direction. Action became my promise. Not a future guarantee, but a present commitment. A way of moving that didn't contradict my intentions. A way of loving that didn't rely on constant reassurance. I trusted that when the time came, what I had done would speak clearly without needing explanation. Because actions, when they are consistent, leave a trail that doesn't lie. A trail that leads back to intention, back to choice, back to a love that was never just felt, but lived day by day through restraint and effort, and quiet loyalty and decisions that kept pointing in the same direction without asking for applause or certainty or permission to continue. And so I kept acting in alignment with what mattered, letting behavior carry meaning where words were unnecessary and letting consistency become the pro of that stayed when everything else was stripped away. Fear has a way of revealing who you are when comfort disappears. I didn't expect it to be loud or dramatic. It arrived quietly in moments where doubt felt reasonable, where stepping back would have been understandable. I felt it in the hesitation before choosing to stay, in the questions that didn't have immediate answers, in the awareness that moving forward meant accepting the possibility of loss. I didn't pretend fear wasn't there. I let it exist without letting it decide for me. Running would have been easy, disappearing into distance, convincing myself that silence meant protection, that detachment meant strength. But I've learned that avoidance doesn't make you strong. It only delays the moment you have to face yourself. I chose to stay present with what scared me. I chose to feel the uncertainty fully instead of numbing it. Fear loses its power when you stop negotiating with it, when you stop asking it for permission to continue. There were moments when the risk felt personal, when caring meant opening parts of myself that had learned to stay guarded. I knew what it meant to be hurt. I knew what it meant to lose, something you didn't think you could replace. Fear reminded me of all of that, but it also showed me something else. It showed me that protecting myself too much would cost me more than risking something real. Safety without meaning is just another form of emptiness. I didn't move forward recklessly. I move forward deliberately. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the refusal to let fear dictate direction. I listened to it, acknowledged it, and still took the next step. Each step made the fear quieter, not because it disappeared, but because it realized it no longer had control. I stopped asking what could go wrong and started asking what would happen if I never tried. Fear tested my consistency. It showed up when progress slowed, when signs were unclear, when waiting stretched longer than expected. It suggested that effort without guarantee was foolish, that commitment without certainty was unnecessary. I let those thoughts pass without adopting them. I understood that guarantees are rare and meaning is built without them. I chose to act from values instead of outcomes. There is a certain honesty that comes when you stop running. You see yourself clearly. You see what matters enough to face discomfort for. I saw that what I felt wasn't fragile. It didn't collapse under pressure. It stayed steady even when fear tried to shake it. That steadiness became my anchor. It reminded me that fear is temporary, but regret has a longer memory. I didn't armor myself with detachment. I didn't pretend I didn't care. I let caring be visible. Even when it made me vulnerable, that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was evidence that I was still alive to what mattered. Fear respects that kind of honesty. It steps back when you stop hiding. It loses leverage when you stop pretending you don't. Every time fear suggested retreat, I chose presence. Every time it suggested silence as escape, I chose intention. I didn't force outcomes. I didn't demand reassurance. I simply refused to abandon direction. Fear can only stop you if you let it rewrite your purpose. I didn't let it. I carried it with me, acknowledged its weight, and continued forward anyway, learning that courage isn't about conquering fear once, but about meeting it again and again without surrendering ground. Continuing to walk into uncertainty with calm resolve, steady breath, and a commitment that didn't disappear when the path grew darker, or the answers grew fewer, or the distance demanded more honesty, more patience, more strength than comfort ever required. Loyalty doesn't announce itself when everything is easy. It reveals itself when staying costs something, when enthusiasm fades, when attention drifts elsewhere.